An austere moment. Thank you. It's an austere moment, but of course we are with friends and in our community, so I think time to reach out, and fortunately we'll also have the reception afterwards. So I'm Jessica Einhorn, and I'm the Dean of SAIS, and I want to welcome everyone here. We are grateful at SAIS that so many people would come to express concern and their support regarding this tragedy. We thought we would start with just a moment of silence and honor the many people who have lost their lives. So if you'd like to take a moment, and we'll just think our own thoughts or prayers in silence. Thank you. Thank you. This has been a terrible tragedy, and there's nothing that I could say that will encapsulate it any better than all of you who are here tonight would know. We know that there are many confirmed fatalities and, of course, tremendous numbers of missing people, a tremendous challenge in reconstruction, one that we have faith the Japanese people can do with admirable courage and conviction, but still it's quite a challenge. It appears that no lives of SAIS students or their families have been lost, not so far as we know, but that we do have a student whose family is from the Fukushima area, and that's Ryo Tsuzukihashi, who was back in Fukushima, where that stricken nuclear plant is located during the break, but is fortunately back here and on the stand, will be on the stand with us today. I don't know if Ryo is here. I don't know if you want to stand up. Thank you. We have several SAIS students from northern Japan and, of course, from the Tokyo area, whose family experienced the trauma of the quake and the aftershocks and the dislocations that are continuing, and our thoughts are with all of them. We're also grateful for the contributions of community members, like the rescue team of the Fairfax County Fire and Rescue Department, which recently returned from working in the disaster area. Captain David Barlow, who's of this team, will be with us on this program today. I'm personally pleased, as a former World Bank, there I have my colleague, as a former World Bank senior official, that we have a representative of the World Bank, Hironori Kawauchi, who's also following the disaster closely and with us and will be also on this panel. I would like to thank the SAIS Japan Relief Team, a group of concerned SAIS students which took the initiative. They took the initiative in organizing this event, in cooperation, of course, with the Reischauer Center and our able SAIS Communications Director, Felisa Klubas. I believe the relief team has already raised over $5,000 in student donations and in others, faculty and administration, to aid the victims, and that they are prepared to accept and put to good use any additional donations that are received today or at this meeting, or that indeed you do on your own. We will appreciate those. I'm going to introduce to you our wonderful director of Japan programs, and also the head of the Reischauer Center, of course, our very distinguished Kent Calder, professor, former diplomat, has worked in Tokyo, has decades of relationships. His wife was kind enough to come from Princeton to join us today to also show how meaningful this event is. So please all welcome, and let me turn this program over to the very good hands of Professor Calder. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dean Einhorn. We are privileged to have you here today, and I'm so happy that we have the sort of turnout that we have. Numbers, of course, but more than that, just the variety of people, so many students. Of course, Ryo's family in Fukushima. He knows firsthand what the sort of suffering that's been going on and destruction. In our panel, as we begin to get into the panel, we'll see different perspectives on the human crisis that we have had there. I believe that they have some PowerPoints, pictures from the scene in Japan. Captain Barlow, as we mentioned, he's on his way actually from Fairfax County now. He'll give us an account of what the Fairfax County relief team actually was doing in Japan. And so in so many ways, from different parts of the community here in D.C., of course, have been involved in the relief effort. And as SAIS people interested in Japan, of course, we are delighted at that and at the outpouring of sentiment and support that has been coming. Exactly also as, well, the enormity of the tragedy, of course, we don't need to gainsay. We hear from the media the magnitude of this. As many of you know, as of today, there have been over 13,000 people confirmed dead, more than twice the scale of the tragedy already in Hanshin in 1995. Apart from that, tragically, roughly 15,000 missing as well. And all of this is even after the very intensive relief efforts of this last weekend. This is the sort of thing that we really, of course, can't calculate in economic terms. But economists and specialists on the Japanese economy tell us that the reconstruction may run up to $300 billion. And of course, we're looking forward to Kawauchi-san's recounting of that. There are a range of estimates, I should stress, and of course, many hope that certainly it will be easier than that. But it's a massive earthquake, it's a massive tsunami, it's a massive reconstruction job, probably in economic terms the largest earthquake reconstruction job in terms of the financial burden in world history. So this kind of a really massive thing, of course, 2 or 3 weeks ago, none of us, a month ago certainly, none of us could have ever imagined. There were the forecasts that at some point Japan, being earthquake prone, was going to have a tragedy or at least a major shock, and Japan was prepared more than no doubt most countries. As those of you who know Japan well, you appreciate how organized the Japanese people are, how far forward they tend to think in these matters. And I think it's fair to say that Japan was working, thinking forward, concerned with this in Japanese schools. As a lot of you know, people learn reflexively in elementary school that they should get under their desk if there's an earthquake, and they plan where they should go in the event of an emergency. So Japan was prepared, but the key point, the tragic point, was precisely that this was so large, that this was so massive, that it was the sort of thing, it was one of the great earthquakes of history. And so Japan has done remarkably well, but it's faced a tremendous tragedy. And we are honored today, I should say, to have as our special speaker right at the beginning of our service the Japanese ambassador to the United States, Ambassador Ichiro Fujisaki. Many of you know, because he's been so active around town, Ambassador Fujisaki in so many incarnations. His eloquence on, I remember now some days ago on McNeil Lehrer NewsHour, in recounting both the tragedy and then also the appreciation of the Japanese people for the support of Americans from so many parts of our society. This has been something, I must say, as someone who cares about U.S.-Japan relations, for all the tragedy of it, it has also helped to bring us together. And in that sense, we're grateful for the remarks of Dean Einhorn, and now to hear from Ambassador Ichiro Fujisaki. Ambassador, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. As Professor said, some of you may have heard what I've already said on television or in some other occasions, and I think I'm going to repeat what I have said because, well, situation has not that changed. Every day we're working on 3 issues. Search and rescue, because still more than 15,000 people are missing. Secondly, providing basic human needs, food, water, electricity, and other needs to people. Nearly 200,000 people, exact number is, I think, between 160,000 to 170,000 people are still out of their houses. Some people have lost their houses, and between 700,000 and 800,000 people, 70,000 to 80,000 people have had to evacuate. So nearly 170,000 people are still in either town hall, in school, gymnasium, and wanting all these basic human needs. Japanese government people are trying to provide these, but because transportation infrastructure has not been restored, so we are struggling to do that. The third challenge is this nuclear power accident. Every day we are trying to put things under control, but we have not really come to that yet. And you have seen on television, newspaper, that we are struggling now with the contaminated water. This 3 challenges together coming at the same time, earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear accident, power accident. This situation is the first time for humankind to experience together. And we are going through a very severe test now. Of course, there was a big earthquake, big tsunami, or a nuclear power accident, but not altogether at once. Japanese government, people, and self-defense force, TEPCO, the company, firemen and police and all others are working really hard to try to cope with the situation, but we are really helped by international community. More than 130 countries and regions and more than 30 international organizations are extending their hands. And above all, Americans. American government has said that they'll do everything they can, and they are doing it. Your forces, more than 20,000 forces are all out, and 160 airplanes, more than 20 ships, including aircraft carrier, was deployed, and working day and night for search and rescue as well as for providing basic human needs. And your forces were there to bring water to a nuclear power plant site as well. Your experts, more than 50 of them are sent to Japan and discussing every day with Japanese experts. I'm very impressed by the knowledge, the expertise that they have brought to us, and also equipments as well. We are really being helped by them. And American people are extending massive support to us. School kids in this vicinity have made 1,000 cranes and made so cute cards and brought to us. Yesterday, some of them came to me as well. We meet a lot of the school people, and so cute. I'm thinking of how to send this to Japan, but I haven't come up with the... but this is so nice. And also, Red Cross has amassed more than 140 million, I was told, dollars. And a lot of goodwill, donations, contributions. And some of the religious group like American Purse has brought basic human needs by chartering plane as well. Deeply impressed. I've been always saying that this is such a difficult time for Japan. I was born after the war, so I've never experienced anything like this. And I am hopeful that looking at how Japanese people are coping with this issue so graciously, so strongly, one day we'll overcome this. Some people cannot overcome. Some people who have lost their family will take longer. Some people who have lost all their work, like farmers or fishermen, have a lot of difficult times, I know. But country as a whole have to overcome this, and we are starting to do so, day by day. But I've always been saying that I'm more convinced by the old saying, a friend in need is indeed a friend. We are so grateful to American people for standing with us in such a difficult moment. Really such a difficult moment. We'll long remember this, and we'll never forget it. I thank you very much.
We all felt that. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, and also thank you, Dean Einhorn. We now are at what I think will be really one of the high points of our evening service. we're going to see actual pictures, actual images from Fukushima and from the areas that have been devastated by someone a group actually, who can tell us very well about that. I ask now for our panel to come up and join us on the stage. Let us begin with Ryo. Would you please come up from Fukushima? And also Mr. Kawauchi from the World Bank, who is a specialist on the earthquake and its implications. Also, we're honored today to have Captain David Barlow with us from the Fairfax County Rescue Team, who has also served in South Africa, in Iran, in Haiti, in a range of emergencies and rescue efforts around the world. And thank you for coming to be with us today. Without any further ado, because pictures really mean a lot more than words, as we so often say, perhaps we could begin with a series of images of the tragedy and its aftermath that have been put together by our students and the Japan rescue team. Ryo, please, it's yours.
I think image will not show up on the screen, but on the monitor on the corner, so please pay attention to the corner. Oh, there. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah. Lights on? Okay. First of all, I would like to express my deepest appreciation for all the aid and assistance people living in Japan have received from so many countries ever since the earthquake hit us on March 11th. Over 100 countries and regions, numerous international organizations and entities have offered aid and assistance, among which we owe our sincere gratitude to the U.S. Armed Forces, the search and rescue teams led by such courageous people as Captain Barlow, who is with us here today, and the nuclear specialists who are cooperating with locals to resolve the problems. Some of you may be wondering why, a second-year SAIS student, I'm standing here among these distinguished guests. At any rate, I am a Fukushima native, born and raised in the region until I was 18 years old. The devastated regions are located quite near my hometown and are places that I love and would visit frequently. I hope to offer you an image of what I saw on the ground during those past weeks and convey to you what is happening in Fukushima and the Tohoku region of which it is a part. Let me start from a quick geographic view. Japan is composed of 4 major islands. The earthquake hit northeast region of Japan, which is called Tohoku in Japanese. Tohoku has a population of 10 million, and its GDP is around $400 billion, which is comparable to that of countries such as Austria, Sweden, and Poland. Tohoku has historically been Japan's largest source of grain and fisheries. The rice paddies in Tohoku satisfy over 20% of Japan's consumption of rice. 3 out of Japan's 6 largest fishing ports are located. In addition, this slide shows lots of factories of Japan's key industry are in Tohoku, such as Toshiba, Toyota, Nissan, and others, which are severely damaged. Tohoku is also known for its abundance of scenic spots and places of historical interest. Like this, you can see big castles, beautiful islands, and rivers. Next, I want to put emphasis on the fact that Japan is one of the most seismically active regions in the world. These spots are over magnitude 7 earthquake centers from 1990 to 2000. So, where is Japan? We can't find. The earthquake this time was magnitude of 9.0, the fourth strongest to be ever recorded in the world. It hit Tohoku coast, and the tremor under the deep sea has caused the deadly tsunami, which is not the surface movement of the sea, but rather a massive movement of the ocean as a whole. The devastating earthquake, the deadly tsunami, and the complete destruction that followed has left us heartbroken. Let me show you one video. This is a tsunami video broadcasted by Menkoi TV in Iwate. And you can see some car is still in evacuation. There are other pictures like this. And you can see huge vessels stranded by tsunami and cars completely destroyed. And this is a traditional Japanese shrine, also destroyed by the earthquake. Many of you may have seen similar images of the moment that the tsunami wiped out anything in its path. The people of Tohoku are known to be well prepared for tsunamis, since it has occurred so many times in our recorded history. But this huge tsunami went far beyond anyone's expectations. Its height is estimated to have been over 100 feet, killing so many people while they were still evacuating, because nobody imagined its height or its great speed. Even after the tsunami hit coastal cities, the earthquake didn't stop. The following video shows you the great number of aftershocks that followed. This shows aftershocks happened in 4 hours after the initial earthquake. The total is more than 30, 5 of which exceeded magnitude 7. So far, we have had 380 aftershocks, and they are still continuing even now. As of today, more than 13,000 people have been killed. Over 15,000 people are still missing. And both numbers continue to rise as the days go by. I think you can understand just by listening to these numbers how monstrous this all is. But the accident at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant has been yet another severe blow. Since radiation levels are still high, more than 1,000 dead bodies remain exposed to the weather, because the rescue teams cannot approach them. The bottom line is, this disaster is not just an earthquake, but the combination of the earthquake, the tsunami, and the nuclear accident. Now, let me turn to what I saw in Fukushima. Most of the media coverage of Fukushima has, I think, largely focused on the nuclear issue. But I want you to understand that the disaster there has multiple dimensions. This is a picture taken after the tsunami hit Soma City, which is among the many coastal cities in Fukushima. This shows the destruction in the inland areas, landslides and the dam collapse, which killed many residents. I was completely devastated to hear this news until I finally got through to my family and confirmed that they were all fine, including my 4 years and 3 years daughters. I was relieved at the time. However, worsening nuclear accident made me go back to Japan. When I landed in Haneda Airport in the March 16th, Tokyo had a minor rise of radiation levels. I jumped onto a train around 10 p.m., fearing I would see some confusion. But I found a more or less ordinary Tokyo, where some people were drunk and tuttering, while others were asleep in the train. I was very relieved to see this typical scene in Tokyo, and found that everything was quite normal in many aspects, except some scheduled blackout. Then I tried to get back to Fukushima. Even though the nuclear accident continued, surprisingly, many people were trying to get there, and actually, the number of buses to Fukushima had been doubled, but was still crowded. This is a waiting area of buses heading for Fukushima. When I finally got a ticket and reached Fukushima, the situation there was still critical. I had heard that supplies for gas and food were very limited. I feared I would see a community in panic. But the fear was needless. People were calm and were already trying to get back to their usual lives. Let me show you another picture. Of course, this is not smoke coming from a nuclear plant, but coming out of manufacturing plants that have resumed their business. The next picture shows a reopened supermarket in Iwaki City, 20 miles south from the nuclear plant. You can see how many people are going back to their daily activities. Some media reports admire the fact that the victims have kept calm during the chaos of the earthquake and the nuclear accident. I'm not sure whether this is because of general Japanese culture or not. But beyond that, I found at least 2 specific cases that show why people there kept calm. First, I would like to raise the role of the local media. When I got back, the Fukushima people were using not only Facebook or Twitter, internet news or TVs, but also old-fashioned radios. The local radio station worked as a sort of intermediary, broadcasting a number of audience participation programs where local people could ask questions or learn what they should do about their day-to-day concerns, such as where they could get their daily necessities, where it was safe to hang their washing out to dry, and if it was safe for children to play outside or not. After all, Japan has always coexisted with massive natural disasters. Some research suggests a tsunami more devastating than this one hit Tohoku 1,200 years ago. We experienced the Great Kanto earthquake in Tokyo in 1923 and the Great Hanshin earthquake in Kobe in 1995. We have had to struggle through all kinds of natural disasters caused by volcanoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, tornadoes, heavy snows, and so on. This is a part and parcel of Japan's history, and I believe what makes us different. It has helped us develop our strong will and maintain our patience. I believe we Japanese have and will keep this mindset and take a solid step forward to recover from this massive triple disaster. I would appreciate if you, who have so kindly participated today, would maintain your trust and confidence in Japan's strength and ability to recover. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Ryo. What you had to say, calamities are part and parcel of Japan's history, but they've made us strong and given us our strong will and patience. I haven't heard that before. I thought that was eloquent. I think we all did. And the eloquence of your personal experience, too. So I think our heart goes out certainly to you and to your family and to your colleagues from the Tohoku area of Japan. Our thought in putting this memorial service together was not so much to be coldly, rationally analytical, but more to give a human dimension, to give a sense for what people have been going through, people who have experienced this tragedy. And as our second speaker, we have someone who has very unusual perspectives from a different dimension. Captain David Barlow, I mentioned his general background earlier. I don't want to be redundant except to say that he was one of the leaders of the unit that was dispatched to Japan, a group of 74 rescue workers from Fairfax County, right across the river in Virginia. And we're grateful to you, Captain Barlow, for coming, and we look forward to your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you for the nice introduction. Obviously, my name is Captain Dave Barlow. I work for Fairfax County Fire and Rescue, and I have the honor and privilege of being able to come here and speak to you guys tonight on a personal account from the perspective of our team, and as well as my individual perspective on the tsunami and earthquake event that struck Japan. The one thing I don't know that everybody realizes is, whether you're from this area or not, and I'm fortunate enough to be part of what's considered to be one of the best teams in the world for our search and rescue. We are a team that works for USAID. We're one of 2 international teams that responds to disasters all around the world. We forget that the people from the teams from LA and Fairfax County both are people that they're in your lives. They're normal, everyday people just like you sitting in this room. So again, it's truly our privilege to be able to come talk to you tonight, as well as to serve the many countries as well as Japan around the world. I want to kind of give you a little bit of background about the team, give it a little bit of fill in the blanks as far as what the team is about, and then kind of go into our response to Japan and just kind of my personal account to give you an idea of what my perceptions were, as well as, you know, the people of Japan and everything that they're going through. So we'll kind of start off with the team info. Obviously, Fairfax County Fire and Rescue is in partnership with the State Department, USAID, OFDA. We comprise and make up USA Team 1. The 74-member team is a team of people that range from doctors, paramedics, engineers, rescue specialists, everything up and down the board, riggers. We're prepared to go around the world to be able to assist with natural disasters. Increasingly, our role is becoming more and more humanitarian aid as these disasters take on different shapes every time something happens. In my time on the program, which has been over 10 years, I've never been to two that were the same. They all have their own nuances and their own challenges that you can never prepare for. Of all the places in the world that I could have ever thought of going, Japan fell pretty low on the list. You know, Japan is extremely prepared, and in a lot of ways feels much better prepared than the U.S. for a lot of different things. And it really just kind of illustrates all of our vulnerabilities to things that we don't know what the future holds. You know, we think we're prepared today, but, you know, are we really prepared? We don't really know. So that's kind of the crux of the team. The team is mainly comprised for USA 1 of Fairfax County Fire and Rescue firefighters and paramedics, with the specialties with the engineers and doctors or outside vendors. Our doctors are all doctors at the local ERs from Fairfax and Fauquier, Loudoun, hospitals, places like that. With our specialty response, our job is we go to assist the local jurisdiction. We don't come in and take charge of anything. We go there and we support the local responders at the request of the host government. We come in and we fill whatever holes they need filled, assist them in whatever way that we need to. And this was no different than that. We, you know, just to give you a little personal note on that, obviously, I have a pager where I get all the earthquake pages, anything over 6.0, because frequently that's the kind of stuff that we go to. So obviously I got the page. You know, Japan gets earthquakes all the time. Japan is no stranger to earthquakes by any stretch of the imagination. But when the one that was 8.9 came up on there, that's a game changer in the earthquake thing. On a personal level, you look at the earthquake anatomy, you look at the depth, where it is on the Richter scale, and then how far it is away from any sort of populated area. That happened late that night. I went to bed, and then my boss, the operations chief, called me about an hour later and said, "Hey, you see what's going on in Japan?" I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "I just got home from work." I said, "Are you keeping an eye on it?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "All right, so I'm going to bed. You give me a call if something comes up." So he called me about an hour later. He said, "All right, we're going in. We got to put together a roster. You know, USAID and the State Department is making the offer to the government of Japan." So that happened. So I left my house at 2:00 in the morning. Headed in, then we begin the process to start getting the team together, because obviously we start notification processes. There's a lot of logistics that has to be worked out. So, you know, and you know, my wife, she's no stranger to this. This happens not all the time, but working in the fire department, I wake her up, she rolls over, I'm like, "Hey, I'm going to work, we're probably going to Japan." And she's like, "What's going on?" So I'll call you in the morning. So we went to work, and, you know, we never really know whether we're going to go out the door or not. A lot of things have to come into play. We have to make the offer. The State Department, through AID, makes the offer. The host government has to request assistance. There's a lot of diplomatic stuff that goes on. It was way above my pay grade. But all of that ended up working out. So we got the word that we were going to go out the door. All the logistics stuff was already in motion. So the deal was us and LA County, USA Team 2, were going to go over to Japan. And at that time, we don't know what that means. You know, our mission is so vague. At that point, you have high-level government officials that are talking. You know, do you need help? Do you not need help? You know, what's going into that thought process? So we all got on a plane. Our equipment got on another plane, and we went to L.A. We stopped and picked up the team from L.A. We all got on a single plane. We had to stop in Anchorage, Alaska to refuel. And we got off the plane briefly because it was cold when we got back on the plane. So then we actually flew into Misawa Air Base in northern Japan. And, you know, we've been to a lot of different countries, and I can honestly say that the hospitality and the greeting that we received at Misawa Air Base from the government as well as the U.S. military folks there was, in time of crisis, was nothing short of remarkable. They were there to greet us. They had our check-in procedures. They knew where we were going to stay for the night. Obviously, we were waiting to get our dispatch that next morning to where we were going to go, how we were going to get there. Obviously, when we start moving 200 people and approximately 70,000 pounds of equipment, it's not like you just go rent a car and leave the airport. So, you know, the Japanese officials were working on that as well as the U.S. Air Force. So we left the airport. That next morning, we stayed at Misowa Air Base that night. The next morning, we boarded the buses for the 7-hour bus ride down to Afanado, which was the town that we were going to work in. Half of us went by vehicle, half of us went by air, helicopter. The Japanese military took us half the team down in a helicopter. So we get down there, and you know that location, I'm sure you guys are familiar with that, but it's about 120 miles north of Fukushima. And they had a tremendous amount of damage there. You know, I've never been to a tsunami, you know, some of my coworkers went to the Indonesia tsunamis, and that was devastating. But you know, just the amount of energy that a tsunami brings is different than an earthquake. An earthquake is like one type of emergency, but a tsunami with the kind of energy that's in that wave, the destruction that it created, and that like no chance of survival. You know, I mean, they really move fast. The areas that we went to work were nothing. They weren't anywhere near the ocean. They were all in the tips of the bays. You know, Japan has a lot of bays on the East Coast, and as that wave comes in that bay, it gets taller and taller and taller. All that energy gets channeled in. So the towns and the cities and the establishments all on the coastlines of these bays, these fishing villages and these neighborhoods, were impacted by a tremendous, tremendous wave. The water lines on the buildings that we were working were 3.5, 4 stories tall. That's where the water stopped and settled long enough that it deposited sediment on the wall of the building. All right, that obviously was not the overall height of that wave when it first came in. So it was definitely one of the worst disasters that I've ever seen or been a part of. So after we got to Afanado, back up to the timeline of our response, we got to one of the elementary schools there. The local elementary schools agreed to put us up. So we went there. Again, the hospitality was phenomenal. They gave us the building. They were able to give us the shelter. They had facilities there for restrooms and stuff like that. So that was really good. We were able to house USA Team 1, USA Team 2, and the team from the United Kingdom were also in that same building. From there, we set up our logistical booth, our base of operations, which is essentially our command post. And then from there, we go together with members from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Japan, and they are ultimately who USAID and all the foreign teams end up working for. That's our liaison to the local fire departments, to the local fire chiefs, to all the other people that they're going to use us for in that region. So our team leaders get with those guys and decide that we're going to go help out this fire department, one of the fishing villages down there. We guys saw the pictures weren't from there, but it all looked very much the same. So we respond down. We take a couple squads, some of our equipment. We go down to the work site, and we hook up with the local fire department. And those guys were, again, the level of hospitality, the calmness, their resolve, their ability to get their hands around the situation and understand what they needed to do. They had done a tremendous job from first response standpoint. They had canvassed the entire area and what we refer to as a windshield survey or recon. They had found a lot of the live people. They gave everybody their best shot. So really, we're, as a specialty asset, we're coming in, bringing more technical tools and more technical expertise to the situation, just whether we would do in the States. There's different levels of tech rescue response, and the fire departments provide that light first response job. And then we can come in after and use dogs and cameras and some other technical things. But we use the local fire department. They asked us to do some grid searches and clear some areas. And we kind of we do a systematic approach where we start out, we do a windshield survey or a recon, which we either do by air or by elevated platform or doing a big lap. So we're always making a big circle, drilling it down into a smaller circle until the mission objectives are complete. So we started by doing that. We did get an aerial view of the area that we were responsible for. We then broke it down and sent the dogs through. The canine handlers did a search of an area. And then we bring our rescue squad guys through, and they do a physical search. And that's where they start climbing in the piles, getting down deep into the voids. They hail, they yell, they call out. We use listening devices and search cameras to get deeper into the voids and do that. We were able to clear those areas relatively quickly. We would spend about a day at each one, and then the fire department would assign us another area another objective they needed to complete. Obviously, from a response standpoint, that local fire department had done a tremendous job, because we forget sometimes that, just like I mentioned earlier, we are all part of the normal everyday population. So when you have a disaster, it's not like the responders are available. Their families are their first concern. Their families are their priority. So I felt, had done a tremendous job balancing their family responsibilities as well as their responsibilities to their community to get all the work done that they did get done. So we got all those tasks accomplished. The locals in the community were tremendously helpful on giving us details about where people were, who was missing, who wasn't missing. The best information we get comes from the local population. Nobody knows your neighbor better than the neighbors, So we spent a lot of time talking to them, using the translator, and they also had a tremendous amount. Their spirits were high. It was very much they were going to get through it. It was not a down in the dumps attitude. Their attitude was very upbeat for everything that had happened at that point. The city that we worked in, they knew the tsunami was coming. They had the tsunami warning devices in that community. But I guess, complacency and past history always is the enemy for all of us. So they had evacuated to the other side of the railroad tracks, which is what their normal tsunami evacuation is, although that didn't factor in the height and intensity of this wave. So the area that had been evacuated, there was hardly any fatalities, hardly any injuries. The people that were caught off guard were a little farther up the hill. They were normally, for any kind of tsunami event or tsunami warning, felt they were out of harm's way. But it just things to describe destruction. I saw a video he had on the screen earlier. But when you have a tugboat, a full-size ocean tugboat that's a half a mile inland from any water, that didn't float there on 4 or 5 feet of water. That's a tremendous amount of water. That's a tremendous amount of energy. And for this thing to be sitting up halfway up a mountain in a neighborhood just gives some sort of insight into what kind of event that they went through. Houses were gone, ripped off their foundations. They're just gone. It was like 200 acres of toothpicks that were all lumber that the houses were built out of. Everything was tangled up. There were cars that were bent over bridges. It looked like cars that you would see damage. Equivalent damage would be like seeing a car that had been in a 70-mile-an-hour highway crash. With just that kind of damage, that kind of impact on a building. One of the buildings we had, a semi-tractor trailer was on top of the roof of a couple houses. There was cars that were in department stores on the 3rd floor. Like that was the showroom, and they'd come through the back wall. There's just a tremendous amount of damage. The devastation was something that I personally have never seen. So after we finished that, we helped a couple of the local jurisdictions with the same goal, helping them out, meeting their goals and objectives for their operational periods. The military had obviously come to the aid of, I'm not sure how that works in Japan, but they had used the military to do a lot of searching, and they had their own marking system, and they did a really good job. They were pretty thorough as well. So the country as a whole really did a really good job from a first response standpoint, and I would be surprised if any country in the world would have the kind of response that they did. The locals were awesome. They were bringing us food when we were at the elementary school. They were really a pleasure, despite of everything else going on, having to wait in lines for gas. They were sitting 3 and 4 hours in a line to get fuel. They were allowing them to get 40 yen of fuel, and that was it. So they were rationing that out. So then after, we demobbed and came home, and were met again by the Japanese ambassador. He was gracious enough to get up and come meet us at 3 or 4 in the morning, whatever time we got back. So, I mean, it was truly a blessing. That was it for our mission as far as USA Team 1. Some of the stuff, I know you guys are going to have some questions later, but some of the things that I know you guys are talking about, and I know you guys are thinking about, but the people that are the real heroes in all this are the 300 people that you hear about that are still working the Fukushima site. And, you know, who knows how that's all going to shake out. You know, there's some uncharted water as far as history goes right now. But those military personnel, the plant workers, and the firefighters that are working that day in and day out, a lot of them still haven't been home. You know, when this is all said and done, they're going to be the ones that save the day on this. So, anyway, again, it was an honor and privilege to come talk to you guys and give you some insight into what our team does. And I'll be more than glad to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Captain Barlow. Your remarks speak for themselves, as it seems to me also do the many efforts of so many people in this rescue. I'm happy that we, as a country, have also had 20,000 members of U.S. forces in Japan who've been involved in this, and as well as, of course, the State Department team, the Earthquake group working on this sometimes 18 hours a day. We have one of the members of that, Kevin Mayer, is here today, and I think we all appreciate the efforts that so many people in so many ways have made in the response to this. As you see, what we've tried to do is to focus on the human scale. We do want finally to step back a bit and think about the implications. All of us believe and know that Japan ultimately will recover. In what form, how, what is the impact of this? To speak to that issue, we have Hironori Kawauchi, who is with the World Bank. He's a senior economist of the East Asian Pacific region of the World Bank. And so we're happy to have you with us. Thank you very much, Mr. Kawauchi.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for these opportunities. My name is Kawauchi, Hironori Kawauchi from the World Bank, and I'm in charge of the economic analysis on the East Asian regions. And as one of the Japanese nationals, I'd like to join Ryo and the other colleagues to thank all of you for the very warm words and great sympathy for the Japanese people. And this is still ongoing event, so we think that it is too early to make any calculations or to make any projections on the future picture of the Japanese economy. So today I'd like to show some implications and some facts on these disasters compared with the previous disasters in Kobe earthquake in 1995 and the Great Kanto earthquake in 1923. So the World Bank, on March 21st, we launched the first very preliminary analysis on the impact of these disasters. It says, if history is any guide, where GDP growth will be negatively affected through mid-2011. Growth should, though, pick up in subsequent quarters as reconstruction effort, which could last 5 years, accelerate. This is the normal path of after the disaster, the Japanese economies. At first, of course, most of the economic activities were destroyed or damaged in the stricken area, and so GDP growth will be declined. But after that, the reconstruction effort, especially the public expenditure for the relief and the reconstruction, is coming to the public, and it will boost the economic growth. So, while it says while it is too early to estimate accurately, the cost of the damage is likely to be greater than the damage caused by the 6.9 magnitude Kobe earthquake in 1995. The damage in Kobe earthquake was almost 10 trillion yen. That was 100 billion yen. And we estimate that this time it might be much larger. And last month, the Japanese government made some calculations, and it will be from 16 trillion yen to the 25 trillion yen, which is around the $300 billion maximum. But yes, this is the first, our preliminary estimation that if this disaster is on the normal path, the effect would be very limited. And this is the picture of the relationship between, shows the relationship between Japan and East Asian countries, the export to Japan. And it shows that now the export-import relationship between Asian countries and Japan is not so large compared with 10 years or 10 years ago. Indonesia is 20%, and this is the largest. And yes, China is less than 10%, or Cambodia, Laos, or Mongolia is almost 1% or 2%. And on average, the East Asian countries are, yes, about 10% of the export is coming to, yes, Japan. And so it is not so big and not so limited itself. And this is public debt denominated in yen to Japan, and Thailand has 60% of Thailand external debt is denominated in yen, but this is yes, very large, and usually it is not so big. And this might be affected if the exchange rate is drastically changed between the US dollars and the yen, or like that. And just after the earthquake, the yen was highly appreciated, and it recorded high after World War II. It is 76 yen per dollar. But it is some kind of the speculations, and now it is coming back to the very normal level. And the G7 finance ministers said that they will have a strong actions to tackle such kind of the speculations. So now the exchange rate is relatively stable. So this is, so far, no worry for that. But having said that, this is the normal path of the Japanese economy after the disaster. And this time, we have to point out a few facts which were not observed in our previous disasters. And again, it is too early to estimate any or show any specific direction of the Japanese economy, and it depends on how these disasters will be handled, and how and when this would be resolved. It depends on that, but I'd like to show some implications and some facts surrounding this disaster. The first one is the power outage. As you know, the power plant, including the nuclear power plant, were destroyed. And now Japan is suffering from the electronic power shortcomings. And some rolling blackout is planned in Japan. And this is the graph of the April 1st. The blue line is the normal demand of the electric power. And the red or pink one is the actual demand on the April 1 this morning. The blue one was the demand on the last year, April 1st. It shows that almost 25% of the power demand is declined, or it means that the Japanese people voluntarily shrinked their power demand, and so that is because now we are not suffering from the very frequent rolling blackout. But it means that 25% shrink of the power supply means that the 25 or, yes, 10% or 20%, I don't know, the percentage of the shrink of the economic activity in my country. So this kind of the electric power supply shortages will make or some impact on the economic activities like industrial productions or the private consumptions or like that. And in summer, it is anticipated, it is forecasted that the demand supply will be rocket up to the 5,000. That is a normal year. So we will have to be we will suffer from some kind of the power rolling blackout in summer, and it may affect in some sense to the Japanese economy. This is a document from the Japanese government, and it's talking about the constraint on electric power supply. And it shows that, yes, of course, it is difficult to estimate the impact in exact numbers because it is subject to significant uncertainty. It is true, surrounding the reaction of this agent. So, yes, it is too early to make any effect on this electric power supply shortages. But anyway, the enterprises will adjust its operations, and household will save its electricity demand, and it might shrink its economic activities like private consumptions like that. So it depends on how and when this kind of the economic power shortage will be resolved, and how the stakeholders like the Japanese government or the typical Tokyo electric power companies will handle this issue. And the second issue, which was not observed in the previous disasters, is of course the nuclear accident. This is horrifying, and it is the first experience in my country after the great earthquakes. As Ryo said, the Tohoku area, the northeast area of Japan, is a very major resource of the agriculture and the fisheries. And if some kind of the perceptions that in Japan, most of the waters or most of the airs are polluted by the nuclear radiations, it might, yes, it is very easy to imagine that it might have some kind of the impact to the export or the domestic consumption of such kind of the fish or agricultural products. And if this nuclear plant accident will last long, maybe the foreign tourist to Japan will be affected. Of course, it is very easy to imagine. Or the domestic tourist, domestic tourism within Japan will be also affected. But again, this is just a fact, and it depends on how the things will be handled and how and when the things will be resolved. So it is premature to say any specific impact so far. And this figure is a little bit medium and longer term implications. Now, as you know, Japan has almost no natural resources, and all of the natural resources for power are imported. And so far, the newest data is 2008, 26% of the electric power was generated by the nuclear power. And now, the nuclear power plant or nuclear power policies in my country is in a little bit difficult situations, and maybe a lot of discussions or arguments will be took place in Japan. And so if we will do something about this 26% of the power supply by the nuclear power, it might give some kind of the impact in the medium or longer term in Japanese economy. And last one is Japan's fiscal situations. And this is public debt, accumulated public debt, the government bond. And as I said, in 1995, we suffered from the damage of the 10 trillion yen. And the Japanese government formulated the supplemental budget for relief and reconstruction. That is about 5 trillion yen for 5 years. And it is about $500 billion. And in 95, our fiscal situation was already very severe, but much better than now. In 95, this is at the time of COVID, the percentage, we had a public debt almost 100% of our GDP. And now, in 2011, we have 200%, twice as the GDP's public debt. So if we need to make formulate some supplemental budget, and so we need to face the problem how to finance it, issuing the additional government bond or restructuring the existing budget, or we will have a lot of alternatives. But anyway, the fiscal situation is very different from the time of COVID. So anyway, we need to take into account these factors, and we need to look very closely at the ongoing event, and we hope that the event will be resolved very sooner. And lastly, yes, as one of the Japanese nationals, I believe that yes, this event will be resolved very sooner, and I believe in the potential of the Japanese people, and I believe in the friendship of the United States or other countries surrounding Japan. So anyway, so far, that's all I can say, and anyway, we will come back to the public with some other analysis later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kawauchi. I know that we do have lots of questions and comments. Let me just make a couple of announcements, and then we'll go to our Q&A. We have at least 15, 20 minutes for that. This is, of course, a stressful time for a lot of people. And I just wanted to note that the Johns Hopkins Student Assistance Program provides for those of you who feel that you would like to talk to someone about the meaning of these things and the feelings that you have about them, free and confidential counseling to SAIS students. And the JSAP clinician who is our counselor here, Ellen Trappy, is in the audience. Ellen, I don't know, you're here. There you are. Thank you very much. If you would like to discuss some of these issues from a counseling perspective, Ellen is happy to do that. I also this morning got a note from one of our alumni. This is one of the wonderful things about SAIS, that we've got alumni all over, but who are deeply concerned about this. Ella Goodwin is the Vice President of AmeriCares, which is an NGO that is very active in Japan right now. They're doing emergency response activities. And they're actually, they have a position for a program manager. If you actually, we can give you the details at the Reischauer Center, both for a program manager and also if you know of any NGOs that are in Japan, based in Japan, that are able to and interested in working on the spot on relief reconstruction projects. They have grants. They've raised a fair amount of money and have grants from $5,000 to $20,000 for people who would like to do that in the next 2 or 3 months. We've covered a lot of things here from the perspective, of course, of personal experience that Ryo Tsuzukihashi presented us. Captain Barlow's remarks, of course, as in the rescue effort, and then more analytically, Mr. Kawauchi. And I know we have questions, thoughts about what this means, where we're headed. And the floor is open for any of you who would like to ask questions. And if you could please identify yourself and raise your hand so we can get a mic to you. Thanks. We have a question right here.
My name is Thomas Grindley, formerly at the Department of Energy. Did the tsunami actually reach the nuclear power station, or was the damage to it secondary damage?
Okay, the tsunami and the nuclear power station. Any brief responses? Maybe that's as an analytical question. As Mr. Kawauchi, do you want to briefly? We also, I should say, we have some specialists on nuclear issues here. They're welcome to add a word, but we just have 15 minutes, so let's move as fast as we can. Thank you.
Very briefly, I think that the second damage of the nuclear power plant by tsunami is the perception of the Japanese people that maybe most of the Japanese people are not thinking that the nuclear power plant is very dangerous, and some nuclear power policy might be revised or the changed, or maybe some of the people are thinking about that. And in my country, the nuclear issue is a very, very political one, and pro-nuclear people and anti-nuclear people are fighting each other for a long time. So this event will make some kind of perception to the normal Japanese people, I think.
Thank you. Actually, we do think of this above all as a kind of memorial event. I don't know if there are questions about the relief effort or about how, the tragedy itself. I think I would particularly ask if people could ask. Yes, please.
Captain Barlow, exactly how many hours or days was your team actually there? And when you say you were assigned your mission, you completed it, I would assume by the time you got there, you were basically helping to recover bodies, and how many, if I could ask such a gross question, were you able to help resolve families in that way?
Here, when we reported to the local jurisdictions, each one of the local jurisdictions had completed their first response capability to their best of their ability, and our role was to come in and provide the technical assets after to do the primary searches and to make sure that everything had been done. There was a lot of things. It was still a rescue mode. In any disaster rescue, it goes on for 10 days. There's a lot of outside factors that come into that. The weather. Obviously, in the impact area that we were in, the weather played huge into that. We're talking about, obviously, the tsunami comes in, you're getting wet, getting into the 20s, low 30s at night. The hypothermia issue is very, very critical. You can live for a long time without food, but when you're without water, your time starts going down. So, to answer your question, we were still in the rescue mode. But, every day that goes by, there's plenty of statistical data out there that shows that it drops exponentially by the day on that. But, we did work, we worked all daylight hours. We worked for 5 days by actual work time.
Thank you. Yes, maybe right in the back, and then up here in the front after. Yes, please.
Mr. Kawauchi. I wanted to just ask a little bit more about giving. At the World Bank, we had something called an e-give online, and it turns out that Japan, this disaster, unfortunate disaster, was one of the most supported ones next to Haiti and the one in Jakarta some years ago. But what is the most effective way? Because some of us are a little concerned about the overhead, the tax that some of the agencies are taking as much as 20, 30% of what we give. Is there a particular vehicle that we can give most efficiently to? Thanks.
I can't really speak to that. There's everybody has their personal opinions about that. But anytime you can get your money closest to the emergency in one way or the other, you're typically doing better. Obviously, the farther away you get, each one of those companies has overhead. And that's economics 101, right? So I can't really, I couldn't comment any farther than that, really.
One thing I just noticed, we as you know, there was a jet student, an American jet student, who was killed in this tragedy, and her family has set up a fund for the recovery effort in Minami Sanriku, which I hear doesn't involve much overhead. Yes, we had yes right here.
Well, I just want to say thank you to everyone on this panel for your service and your unique experiences responding to this disaster in various ways. My name is Mark Flanagan. I'm actually a graduate student in Tokyo. Right now, I was evacuated. I was at International Christian University, or Kokusai Christ Tokyo Dagaku. But I've actually made the decision to go back. We have the option either to quit the program or to return, and I decided to return because I think, just as a personal statement, it's important to show solidarity with Japan. So I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to say at this time, I think all Americans really feel like we should stand with you, and we appreciate your sacrifice and hope for all the best, me personally, and I think all of us as a whole. So thank you again.
Thank you. I agree. I think all of us do feel that way. Yes, maybe right here.
Leonore Blitz, and again, I want to echo what you said. Thank you for organizing this. We appreciate the ambassador coming and all of you for what you've done and what you're going to continue to do. Can you give us some estimate of, did the ambassador say about 175,000 people have lost their homes? What is the timetable? Does anybody have when these homes will be restored, when they will be able to leave the shelters and resume a situation where their life is in housing again?
I think that one estimate that I hear quite a bit is that we're looking probably at the next several months, and of course the nuclear situation complicates that as well. Most of this year is going to be a reconstruction effort, although macroeconomically, if we look at Hanshin, at least Japan recovered remarkably fast from a macro point of view. I don't know. Would anybody add anything?
While we were on the last couple of days that we were working, one of the things I didn't mention is they had cleared their major roads and their major arteries. They had done a tremendous amount of cleanup in the initial phases, and they were well on their way to cleaning things up. So, I mean, it comes down to, based on an opinion of the attitudes and the dedication of the people that we encountered, I would imagine that they're going to work pretty hard and get back up on their feet as soon as they can. Obviously, the thing that we all forget, maybe we do, maybe we don't forget, is sitting here, is this isn't over for them by any means. They're dealing, like Mr. Kawauchi said here, with the rolling blackouts, and that's something we experience. It's still cold over there in the northern part of the country. So there's heating issues, there's food issues, there's still gas issues. They're sanitation, they're still trying to get by every day with a lot of that. So, I don't think, there's a definitive kind of timeline that you could stamp on that right now.
Let's take maybe 2 or 3 questions and bunch them because we're getting close to the end. Yes, one here and then one right there.
Thank you. Mike Billington with Executive Intelligence Review. I'm wondering if any of you would comment on the implications for the United States, or lessons learned, you might say. You've seen this incredible devastation in a country which is by far and away the best prepared. And as Captain Barlow said, the U.S. is sorely unprepared. And this earthquake is part of a general expansion of earthquakes because of the solar activity, which I think we know California could very well be next. And as I understand it, it's threatened with even far more devastation. So if you could comment.
Thank you. That's one good question. Another one.
Thank you very much. My name is Kokyo Gita from American University. I have a question for Captain Barrow. First of all, thank you very much for your service in Japan. Did you feel tired from Japanese self-defense forces or local police officers or the firefighters? And if so, do you think they can continue this hard work next 1 month or 2 months or something? Thank you very much.
Okay. Do you want to start?
So make sure I get the question. You're talking about the locals and the people that we kind of do. Think they have the endurance to keep going to see the recovery through? Is that what your question is? Yeah, I mean, it comes down to motivation at that point, and, you see that in a lot of different things around the world and not necessarily just when disasters, when people are down and the chips are down, and it happens in the U.S. and any country, people rally together and support one another and keep things going. And I don't think that'll be a question. I mean, everybody's going to be tired at the end of the day. But they'll keep each other going, and then there'll be outside forces that when they get down as a group, the things that'll spur them along. And it's no different than if you look at the U.S. for 9/11, you look at the disaster after Haiti. People get together, they come together. So we could have a bunch of adversity in a room today, and there'd be some sort of natural disaster or an incident tomorrow, and we'll all come together for a common goal. That's just human nature. I think that's wherever you go.
Thank you. We're getting close to the end, but of course we do want to hear from our participants, everyone. I don't know, as concluding remarks, maybe first Mr. Kawauchi, and then finally, and as the concluding word, of course, the person who's the most affected, Ryo Tsuzukihashi. Do you have a few last words you'd like to say about this discussion or your response to some of the questions?
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. Not as a senior economist of the World Bank, but just one personal Japanese nationals. I'd like to thank all of you for as I said at first, very warm words and very great sympathies. And yes, we are very thankful for that. And relating to your questions, the Japanese kids or Japanese school kids are usually very well trained for the earthquakes and the tsunamis. We have drills, we have trainings in school days, and most of us are taught that if the earthquake has come, prepare for the tsunamis. And most of the Japanese kids are taught like that. But this disaster is beyond the preparations and beyond the imagination. So I think it is a little bit early to get any lessons, because now things are going and we are searching the missing people. So maybe we need a little bit more time. But anyway, yes, as a Japanese nationals, please let me thank all of you for the very great opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then finally, Ryo.
Okay. Thank you for coming here today. As he said, like many foreigners are now going back to their home countries, I think it's a natural response. But right now, like Fukushima 50, actually the people are working in Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant to cease the accident, are trying hard, whatever they can, to stop the accident. And I want to ask you, like the people who are going back to home countries, or like the people who are hesitant to go to Japan right now, but if the crisis is over, please come back to Japan.
Well, you've said it all there. I should just end by saying we do have a small reception. We also have a box for contributions if any of you would like to add to the funds that the SAIS relief team has raised. They go directly and no overhead directly to Japan. Thank you. Nice meeting you. Thanks a lot.